I'd like to give a big cheerers welcome to Brian Falkner, who is, I'm ashamed to say, I've been telling everyone that you're an Australian author for years and years.
Well, I am an author and I live in Australia, so I can understand the confusion.
But we're also very proud to call you a New Zealand author.
Yeah, that's the one I prefer. I am from New Zealand. So.
Magnificent. So I might start by saying you are quite a versatile writer. Having done pacey books for young adults, and you've done adventure stories for the younger kids and funny stories as well. Is there a genre or age group you prefer writing for?
I don't think I prefer one or the other, but my books in recent years have kind of divided themselves into two different streams. There's the junior fiction and the young adult. And the junior fiction are a lot lighter, they're more funny, the characters get into all sorts of scrapes, but it's all done with a really good sense of fun. Whereas the young adult ones tend to be quite intense, and the kids get into a lot of danger, a lot of trouble, but there's life and death situations, and aliens and explosions and guns, and they're so different that I actually really enjoy writing both of the different genres, and for different reasons. And I've been alternating one of each for the last couple of years. It's been a lot of fun.
Okay, so do you work on young adult stuff specifically at one time, or are you writing a bit of both?
They do overlap more than, I might just start that again. They do overlap more than I'd like them to, because although you'd like to completely separate them and only focus on one thing at a time, it doesn't work like that in the real world, because I'll be busy writing, say, my young adult, and the edit will come in for my junior fiction.
Okay, yeah.
So while I'm really wanting to be thinking about aliens and laser guns and zapping and explosions, I've got to edit a book which is completely different to that, and I've got to get my head out of one and into the other, and then back into the other. So it would be nice to completely separate them, but it's not possible. Okay,
so we won't be seeing any aliens for the younger kids.
Oh, you never know.
Okay. You also use a lot of technology in your books that's quite spectacular. So is it technology that really exists, or especially like with Brainjack with the headsets? Is that something that we'll be seeing in the
The headsets exist. Of course, what you can do with the headset in the book is a lot more advanced than what you can do in real life. Now, the whole book Brainjack came because I read a newspaper article about the Neuro headsets and about the things they were doing with these headsets, and it's some really spectacular things happening in the real world today with Neuro headsets. So my question was, if we can do these really exciting things today, what will we be doing in 10 years' time? And that's what Brainjack really explored. That if this is the science of today, what is the science of tomorrow? Yeah. Sometimes my books get categorized as hard science fiction, and I think the definition of that is that it's science fiction based on science rather than science fiction like, say, Star Wars, with people zapping each other with laser guns in outer space. And the idea is to take some aspect of science and then just look at the future of that particular science, where we might go. And a lot of technological innovations have actually come from hard science fiction. There's a question about the author Arthur C. Clarke, who wrote a story about satellites. Now, did he invent the satellite, or did he foresee the satellite? Because not long after that story, they started creating satellites. So, and this is where, when you take science and you extrapolate it into the future and try and imagine what it will do, you're really trying to predict where the world's going to go. And it's enormously fun to do. And it'll be enormously fun in 10 years' time to see if I was anything close to what we really have.
So are you scared of technology, excited about technology in the future?
I'm not a technophobe, not by any means. No, I love technology, I love my gadgets, and I embrace technology in a big way.
Your background's in
IT.
So
I have a background in IT.
Bring on the computers.
Bring on the computers. I'm not in any way afraid of them. In fact, I do enjoy writing about computers, which I did in Brainjack, because I have worked in that field for so long.
Okay, which brings me to your new series. So it includes, I noticed, a cast of characters that have been named after real people. So can you tell us a bit about the series and the competition that where you got the names of the characters?
Well, that's not exclusive. The names are not exclusive to this series. In fact, every one of my books, going back to the second book that I wrote, has a number of characters that are named after school kids. Now the first one didn't, because it was my first book, and I hadn't yet started visiting schools and meeting children in school. So when I visit a school, I have a competition, and if the child can win that competition, then they win their name in one of my books.
That's
and so
exciting.
there's been probably nearly 100 kids have had their names in one of my books, or are going to have their name in one of my books through winning that competition. And the Recon Team Angel series is no exception. There's the main characters in there are all named after kids in books. Now the series itself is science fiction, and it's a little bit of a blend of that hard science fiction of extrapolating science into the future, and more traditional science fiction with aliens and invading the Earth. Now what I really wanted to write about was the war. And the fact that it's against aliens, in some ways, didn't matter. It's the aspects of the war and teenagers being forced into a situation of war in the modern world using modern weapons. That really interested me. Now, to make that happen, I chose the convenience of having the Earth invaded by aliens who are the size of teenagers, so that the teenagers got chosen to infiltrate the enemy lines. Now, and that's really what the story is about. It's a team of teenage soldiers who go behind enemy lines. Now, the aliens arrive, they arrive in the outback of Australia, and then they take over Australia. And then they spread out to the rest of the world. So when these teenagers have to go behind the enemy lines, they come to Australia. And they drop into Australia, and then they're trying to, in the first book, they're trying to infiltrate Uluru, because the aliens have hollowed out Uluru. I mean, a terrible thing to do. That aliens, they do terrible things. So these teenagers, they have to find out what they're up to inside Uluru. That's the first book.
Yeah. So how many, we've had book 2 released, how many books are we anticipating for the series?
It's planned for 4. I'm not averse to writing some more. The first 4 books will really tell the story of the Great Byzantine War, Byzantines being the aliens. And they'll take it from the beginning of the war through to the end of the war. Now, that doesn't stop me in the future writing other books set during the war. So coming back in time and just finding some aspect of the war that I haven't covered before, and then writing about something that happens. Now, I'm certainly very open to doing that, because it's a great premise, and it's a lot of fun writing.
Absolutely. So do you think there are aliens out there?
Undoubtedly. Whether or not they'll ever get to Earth is the real question. If you consider the size of the universe, it's much more likely that there are aliens than it is that there aren't. But the problem is, if they're 300 million light years away, the chances are we're never going to meet them.
Okay, cool. So quite a broad spectrum of books that you've done, which is magnificent. Who are some of your favourite authors that have influenced you?
Well, you've got to really go back to when I was a kid, and started off reading Secret 7 books by Enid Blyton. I grew up and moved on to Famous 5, also by Enid Blyton, and these are the books that probably most influenced me as a child. As a young adult, I read Alistair MacLean's suspense thrillers, and they have also been a huge influence on what I've written. In fact, this first book in the Alien series, the Byzantine series, is heavily influenced by an Alistair MacLean book called Where Eagles Dare. And I've acknowledged that and referenced that in the text, so that, it's not a coincidence. It's definitely, there are some very strong similarities between the two. Now, Alistair MacLean, a very big, I read just everything that he read, and was so excited when a new Alistair MacLean book would be coming out when I was young.
As do kids now with Brian Falkner books.
That's what I think. More recently, Michael Crichton, and he brings in, I suppose, the science fiction aspects of what I do. So if Enid Blyton has the adventure and the fun of the adventure, and Alistair MacLean brings in the suspense and the thrills, well, Michael Crichton brings in the science fiction and the hard science fiction. And I think you could look at my work and say there's definitely aspects of all of those authors in what I'm writing.
Okay, brilliant. You've also won a truckload of awards over the years. So what do you think makes a good story?
It has to be a small truck.
It's still, still got a large tray of awards.
Oh, thank you. What makes a good story? I mean, for me, it comes down to 2 things. It comes down to having interesting characters, who have interesting relationships with each other, that creates the background for the story. That what they do will influence what happens in the story, but the story itself has to be something that is going to put them in danger. So now we've got characters who are interesting, who have interesting relationships with each other, who are in danger together. And to me, that's what a really good story will have, is those aspects. And in all my books, I think you'll find those.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think it's harder to write for kids than it is to get on their level? Do you think it's...
Then to write for adults?
Then to write for adults.
I haven't really written for adults. I've had tried writing for adults, but never had anything published. So I'm not an expert on writing for adults. But I can say that the thing that appeals to me the most about writing for kids is that there's a kind of a truth in it. There's a simplicity, but there's also a truth. Kids won't accept something that isn't true to them.
Yeah.
It can be the most fantastical, outrageous story in the world, but if it hasn't got that kind of inner truth, the kids won't accept it.
Yeah.
And I really like that. It's a challenge to do it, but I really like that aspect of writing for young people.
Magic. And final question, is there a question you wish someone would ask you? In all the interviews you've done, do you walk away thinking, I wish they'd asked me that question?
Look, there's not really, but I will tell you that I get asked a lot of questions in schools. And they're generally very similar questions. People ask how much I earn, they'll ask how many books I've published, which is my favourite book, these kind of questions. And I got asked the best question I'd ever been asked just a few weeks ago at a school in Brisbane. And the boy put his hand up and said, if you could be a character, any of the characters in any of your books, who would you be and why? And it absolutely floored me. I had to stop and think about it because I didn't have a ready answer for it.
Yeah.
And I had to think through all the different characters in the books that I'd written and why I liked them for various reasons, and try and come up with some kind of answer that made sense. But it was a great question, and it really got to the core. And in some ways, what I do as a writer, creating characters that I think are nice or interesting or intriguing or in some way worth reading about, worth you taking your time and reading 300 pages about them.
Yeah.
Which of my characters was my favourite? Who would I want to be? That was my favourite.
And your answer being?
Well, actually, it goes back to my very first book, which is interesting. I mean, I must admit, I did answer it on the spur of the moment, and if I thought longer, I might have come up with other reasons for other characters.
Yeah.
But it was a minor character from my very first book, which is called The Flea Thing. And it's a character who's a friend of the main character, and he's like the best friend everyone always wants to have.
Yeah.
And he's just such a neat kid, and I really liked him. I thought I'd like to be him.
Yeah.
He doesn't have all the excitement of all the main characters, but
he's a nice guy.
A nice guy.
That's what you want.
Yeah.
So speaking of nice guys, thank you very much, Brian Falkner, for coming in, and congratulations on several wonderful series.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.